clean up after, but it's fun and it's an enjoyable week in the end. It always is. So that's the only announcements we got. And Brother Ricky's doing the leading the scene. Now you going congregational or choir? Okay, well come on and do that then.
Well, y'all might sing real loud tonight. Good to see you, everybody. We're gonna be singing 341. 341. Y'all gonna turn with us, we're on 341. 2:17. mess up all the time, but he started people smiling.
There are times in this life when fear is so heavy and burdens weigh on your mind. You are weak in the knee and no strength can you find, but just hold on, 'cause help's right on time. My Jesus, He's always on time. And though you may see a valley, He sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad He sees what we don't. I've seen His children walk through the darkest of midnights. I've witnessed faith put to the test, and I have watched as the storm blew in with the thunder, but in each trial He knows what's best, and I am so glad that He knows what's best. And though you may see a valley, He sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad He sees what we don't. Now He knows the end from the beginning, and He looks ahead past the hurt and the pain to a place where the peace passes all understanding. He sees the sun through the rain, and though you may see your valley, He sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad He sees what we don't. And I am so glad He sees what we don't. David sang the praises of the glory of Jehovah. Paul preached that all is lost save knowing Christ. And John said he is precious while leaning on his bosom. So for a moment may I humbly testify. Did I mention that I love him? How I worship and adore him when I can see no way he makes a way. Did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he's ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. Now how many sermons can be preached about my Jesus? How many songs can be sung about God's Son? Oh, there are not enough words, enough notes in the music to tell the story of all my Savior has done. And did I mention that I love him? How I worship and adore him when I can see no way he makes a way. Did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he's ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. And did I mention he's been faithful to every promise he's ever made me? I love him, that's all I want to say. I love him, that's all I want to say.
It's an honor and privilege to be here tonight. I want to thank my pastor for the opportunity to stand up here and fill his pulpit. It's been a long time. So thankful for the revival last week. I desperately needed it. It revived my soul. And just like that song the other night, I know my name's there. That's my favorite song. Because you know why? Right down there, 2003, July the 20th, around 12 o'clock, my name was written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And that's the reason I can stand up here tonight and tell you about the love of God. You see, I was down there working on the Whirly Birds today and yesterday, and it just kept coming across my mind. A lot of times we don't understand the situations in life, why things happen. A lot of times it's not for us to know, just to stay faithful to the good Lord. See, that's what faith is, something we can't see. But we know the good Lord can do it. I was hoping Danny would be here tonight because I'm going to be preaching his verse. Romans 8:28. I want to look at some people in the Bible and look at the situations that we all face one way or the other. And it says, and we know that all things work together for them, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Verse 31, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Brother David takes the Lord's Prayer. Father, we come to you, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity. Father, you blessed us with the health and the strength to be here. Father, Lord, I ask you, Lord, just to hide me behind the cross. Lord, forgive me your sin in my life. Keep me from preaching thy word. Father, Lord, help me to deliver the message that you've given me. I know during the revival they talked about this, and the old devil kept saying, they talked about that verse last week. But according to what God says about this word, it's living and breathing. It never gets old. It's like a well just springing up in you each and every day as we go through life. And first thing I want to look at is Daniel chapter 6 tonight. This is all familiar scriptures. And I'm not going to go out and read all the verses, but I just want to hit the high points that the good Lord laid on my heart. Daniel, the 6th chapter, it talks about Daniel and Darius. You see, Daniel was out of the captivity. And all these other governors and princes, there was 120 princes, and there were 3 presidents, and David was the number 1 president. He was not of that Gentile race. He was a Jew. You see, he was out of the captivity. You see, what happened was they were led into bondage. But you see, if you read this chapter on down through there, it talks about the king, like Daniel, because he had a good spirit about him. You see, Darius could pick anybody he wanted to out of his race right there. But God has a man in a plan every time there's something to be had. God plants a man in a place that can show and lead the people. You say, well, Daniel got thrown in the lion's den. Well, let me tell you what happened. Those people got jealous of David, or Daniel, I mean. They knew every morning, noon and night, 3 times a day, Daniel would pray to God. There was something about that man that they didn't like. Jump up to 2021 now. You got people out there praying day and night for this country, for the church. Preachers preaching, lay members praying, teachers teaching. And what is happening? The governors, right now the president, and a lot of the congressmen and the state senators, everybody's trying to get away, do away with this. Same thing with Daniel. They didn't like it because he stood for God, and there was something different about that man. He had that spirit. Have you ever been around somebody that you walk next to them and you just strike a conversation up and you just feel that going from breast to breast? I remember working at Sequoia on them outages, and we was working 6 days, 12 hours a day, and I was there 13 hours a day. And a lot of times you miss church and you just miss it. And you get praying to God, Lord, I just need to talk to somebody. So we had this welding inspector. I had to go up there and take the paperwork up there for him to sign and do some welding inspection for one of my welders. And we got up there talking. The man loved the good Lord. We talked about church and everything. Leave there, a lot of the problems on the job would just seem like they faded away. And go up there because I had like 6 welders that I was having to fill the paperwork out for, and I'd go up there quite often. And I told him, I forgot what the man's name was, but I told him, I said, you know what? I'm going to call you my oasis. He said, why is that for? I said, this is a place that I can come to talk to somebody. We're in a dry desert place up here working. Ain't that many people that want to talk about the good Lord. They want to talk about everything else but the good Lord. But I said I could come up here and it's like getting a fresh drink of water. You see, that's the way Daniel was. They was jealous of him. So they thought, you read on over in there, seemed like the whole country conspired against Daniel. But what did Daniel do? He stayed faithful. You see, all the people done a trick on the king because the king loved David, or Daniel, I mean. I'll get to David here in a minute. But see, Daniel stayed true. The king loved him. That's the reason he set them up right up under him, and they didn't like it. So they come up with a plan. First thing they done to the king was made his head swell. Oh, king, live forever. They probably told him, King, you're the best we've ever had. You're good to everybody. Nobody's better than you. Just blow the man's head up. Then he said, well, King, let's make a decree that nobody can offer any prayers up or any supplication to any other God except for you. So basically they were setting him up as God. See, I had swelled and he forgot what was going on. Pride. Hey man, I'm it. Just look at me, I'm it. They're going to set me up where ain't nobody can do anything except for me. Ask anything but for me. I'm in charge of it all. He signs that bill, just like up there at the White House. They stamp that stamp. It's a law. Back in them days, when the king made a decree, it couldn't be changed for 30 days. As soon as he signed that, I said the good Lord dealt with that heart. And he probably remembered Daniel, but there wasn't nothing he could do. Daniel found out about it. That if he'd done anything, prayed to God that he'd get thrown in the den of lions. How many of us would have quit praying knowing we're fixing to lose our life. Daniel didn't. What did Daniel do? He opened some windows up toward Jerusalem and started praying 3 times a day. What that verse in there say? If God be for us, who can be against us? So that wasn't wrote within a lot, but he knew about it. Because he had that spirit in his heart that the king knew about. He knew that Daniel served a living God. But don't you know that old king, when they brought Daniel up there, your best friend that you loved and set up, they tricked me. Now you're going to have to die. But the old king said, God that you serve, he can protect you. See, Daniel had lived a life in front of that man of death. For that king to have influence, Daniel had influence on that king's life. He knew Daniel had something because he knew that he kept praying. He knew there had to be something to Daniel's spirit because he felt it. And what did Daniel do? He lived it. He didn't give up. You see, they rolled the stone back, and they threw Daniel in the den of lions. It said the king went home and he couldn't sleep. He said his sleep went from him. Said he fasted. You see, Daniel was thrown in the den of lions, but what the old king didn't know was there was an angel had went down there and shut to the mouths of those lions. You see, that dungeon was probably cold and dark and dreary and damp. I say Daniel slept like a baby that night. I say Daniel had one of the lions for a pillow. A couple of them beside him kept him warm. And they probably just meowed all night, so Daniel to sleep. See, the king lost sleep at night. And I say all the governors, the council people, the presidents, they had a party. It don't say that in there, but I say they rejoiced like, we got rid of that man of God. We ain't got to put up with him no more. Him praying day and night for us. Because they don't tell him, he may have called their name. One of them may have been standing there listening to him one night pray. Father, I pray for president number 2. Father, I pray for president number 3. I pray for all the 120 princesses that's in this nation. Lord, that they would see you and know that you're God. See, a lot of times when sinners hears people praying for them, the old devil says, shut them up. They don't need me praying for you. You're gone too far. You know what? If you get rid of him, you're number 2 president, you move up to number 1. Number 3, you move up to number 2. And as the progress goes on, they start thinking in their mind, if we can only get this preacher to shut up and be quiet. That's what the devil wants. You may not be a preacher out there, but you've got a light. Who remembers the little song? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Hiding under a bushel, no. I'm going to let it shine. You see, that's what the devil wants to do. He was wanting to put Daniel's light out. But you see, God had other plans. If God be for us, who can be against us? A lot of people may say, well, the lions wasn't hungry. Let me beg your pardon on this. You see that next morning the king come in and holler, hey, Daniel. He said, live forever, king. But God has delivered us. And you know what the king done? He signed a degree right there. It says all, A-double-L, his accusers. And not to be done with that, the wives of all the accusers and all the kids of the accusers. They said the bones were broke before they hit the ground. So you tell me them lions wasn't hungry. They looked up and said, come on. That angel's gone. My mouth's ready now. The angel had departed, and they was ready to eat. Don't you know that Daniel being a child of God, you know he wasn't up there rejoicing because they were thrown in there and eating. You know why? He had that love of God in there for those people. Even though they knew they were going to try to kill him. The day that they threw him in there, maybe that morning he was out there praying and a bunch of them gathered around because they're going to get the evidence on him. Maybe he had some bushes around his house and they were laying in the bushes listening. And he heard their name called. You see, as Christian people, if you're here lost tonight, we don't want to see you die and go to hell. You see, you may not understand what I'm talking about God being for us. But if you're a child of God, God's for us. God loves you. All right, let's go over here to 1 Samuel 17. Now I'm going to get to David. So my last point was, people can talk about you. They can try to shut you down. They can try to kill you. But the real point is, God won't let them. Because God is in control of all this stuff. Just like Daniel. Y'all keep praying for those people that wants to try to destroy you. I know you've been on jobs where that, I can't get off this point. I know you've been on jobs where that you stand up for what's right, and 90% of the people want you gone. They try to destroy your testimony at work. They try to make you look bad in front of the boss. You see, the devil will try to do anything because he sees he's out to seek and destroy. But if you stay true on your job, when it's all said and done, and you retire or you get another job or those people start to leave, there's a good chance that people's going to come to you and say, hey, I saw the life you lived. You held true. Because I know how it was on jobs. You get on jobs and you say you're a Christian, and a lot of them guys would take and in your lunchbox they'd put pictures in there that you need to see and write things and just be mean. Want you to lash out at them. But if you tell you that you're praying for them, what can they do to you? Can they get mad at you? Probably, maybe. But deep down in that heart, they know you got a love for them, that you're praying for them. All right, let's get to David now. All things work together for good, them that love the Lord. I want to look at David. Talks about over here in verse 31, you know, it talks about him and going out there to the battle. It talks about David said in verse 34, and David said unto Saul, thy servant keeps his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. See, that right there was a precursor for David to face the giant. That's why I had her to think it. So we may see a valley right now. We may be going through a hard time. But God may be preparing us to face a giant. You see, David went out there and that bear come and got that little lamb, and what did he do? He said, I went out and slew the lamb. Or the bear, I mean. Then he said, here come a lion. Grabbed up the little lion and took off with it. Or the little lamb took off with it in his mouth. David didn't back down. He said he grabbed a hold of the beard of that lion. He'd killed that bear. Then he moved up to a lion. So he went out there to see his brothers during the battle. And here's this big giant that had the children of God pinned down. Nobody wanted to face him. Here's this little fella. Everybody else was heads, shoulders above him. But see, God had a plan for him that got his faith built up. Hey, I killed a bear barehanded. I killed a lion barehanded. And God's telling him now, hey, take care of that giant. You can do it. And he told Saul, he said, Saul, I killed that giant. So what does the world want to do? They want to tell you got to do this and that to be faithful to God. See, Saul said, here, put this armor on. Here, take his sword. But David said, no, it's not been tested and proved. I'm going to go on the faith of God. He'll deliver him. See, he told me I could take him. This giant was big. But what did David do? He got that little sling and 5 smooth stones. Round and round. Here we go again. Remember Bible school and Sunday school? Talks about David and his little sling. And he let go of that rock, that stone, buried up. And if you read the Bible in here, you know which way the giant fell? You just think if you got hit in the forehead with a rock and it's big enough to kill you, you think you'd fall backwards, wouldn't you? Nope. He fell face down in the dirt. To me, that's just showing him where he's headed, where his eternal home is going to be. And you know that Saul tried to give David his sword to here. Take this. David said, I don't need it. David took the giant's own sword, cut his head off with it, and carried the head back into town. If God be for us, who can be against us? So no matter what you face in life, we all got giants. That sin that so easily does beset us, that could be a giant in your life that we need to overcome. Maybe the fear of witnessing to somebody, tell them about the good Lord. I can't talk. I don't know what to say. You know what the best thing you can do to tell somebody if you're saved and they're lost? You know what the best thing you can tell them? Tell them about how God saved you. That's the best experience. Because, see, only you can tell your story. Who knows that where that person come from? Dope house? You don't know, you wouldn't know me from Madeline's house cat 10 years ago and say you were saved and I was druggy, and you didn't know it. You come up and say, hey, let me tell you about a man named Jesus. You might be an alcoholic before. You say, hey, I used to do that. But God saved me. Let me tell you, I was 10 years old when I got saved. It's the best life there is. Each and every one of you sitting here that's saved has got a testimony that you can share about the love of God. See, that's what David did. He said, Saul, I killed that bear. God gave it to me. Saul, I killed that lion. God gave me the strength to do it. So no matter what you're going through and what giant you're going to face, he will give you the strength to face it. And not back down. See, all them other ones back down. And one more I want to look at. Genesis 22. Talking about Abraham and Isaac. You see, God told Abraham, I want you to take your only son there you got home, Isaac. I want you to gather up some wood, load up some donkeys and stuff. We're going on a 3-day journey. And I'll show you where I want you to offer your son. How hard would that be to do? You say, what has this got to do with the message? All things work together for good to them that love the Lord. You see, Abraham was being tested by God to see if he would be faithful. It is also an example of Christ coming to the earth being sacrificed, but tonight I want to look at is Abraham being faithful. A question. Are you willing to give up something for the good Lord that you love? If the good Lord tells you to give something up, are you willing to give something up that you really love? You see, that's what he asked Abraham to do here. Abraham didn't know what was going to happen. He went up there to actually kill his son. He had drawn back, and the good Lord stopped him. They said there was a ram over here hung in the bushes. How long had that ram been there that Abraham didn't see? What does it say? He was nowhere in the valley. He sees what we don't. See, God saw that ram in the bush. He blinded Abraham's eyes from seeing it because he wanted to see if he would really give up what he asked him to. He did. If you look at the genealogy of Abraham and Isaac, it comes all the way down through Israel. See, God promised Abraham that his seed would be as sand, grains of sand. But he was just wanting to try. A lot of times we'll say, God, you said this, or God, you said that. And we want to say, why? Why do we need to do this? We don't see why. Why is this happening? But you know what he says? Just put your faith in me. Sarah, I want you to sing it song one more time, please. You may be going through things here tonight that you don't understand why. You may be facing something that's bigger than you. You may be having somebody tell lies on you, trying to do this to you, trying to kill you, break you down. You see, you can kill somebody with that tongue right here. You see, that's what a lot of people try to do to other people, is to kill their testimony. But you know what? You know how you keep that testimony alive? Just like Daniel did. He kept praying. 3 times a day. So no matter what we're going through, he said all things are going to work out for the good for us. That's a promise. And he gave us another promise that he's going to be greater than anything that we face in life. There's promises all the way through here. He said he would never leave us nor forsake us and go to the end of the world. See, I could go to the 3 Hebrew children. They just followed the leadership of God. They took a stand for God. If we take a stand in this world for God, we're going to suffer persecution. People are going to make fun of us. But what happened with all the people with Daniel that may have laughed at him, made fun of him, you holy roller? Daniel was standing up there hearing them screams and their cries for mercy. So no matter what we're going to face, the good Lord will help us. And he said he'd be there. As we all stand, Sarah, you... Shame.
There are times in this life when fear is so heavy and burdens weigh on your mind. You are weak in the knee and no strength can you find, but just hold on, 'cause help's right on time. My Jesus, he's always on time. And though you may see a valley, he sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad he sees what we don't. Now I've seen his children walk through the darkest of midnights. I've witnessed faith put to the test, and I have watched as the storm blew in with the thunder, but in each trial he knows what's best, and I am so glad that he knows what's best. And though you may see a valley, he sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad he sees what we don't. Now he knows the end from the beginning, and he looks ahead past the He sees the mountain you'll be standing on. When all you can see are the tears falling down, I'm so glad he sees what we don't. And I am so glad he sees what we don't.